Welcome back to another video, everyone. Today I am going to show you how I made my latest carnivore cheesecake. This is not strict carnivore, obviously, because it does contain the sweetener and the vanilla, but it's pretty close. It is close enough for me and my husband, and we really enjoy this as a sweet treat sometimes. I started with some pork rinds in my food processor. I didn't really follow a recipe necessarily. I kind of went off of one that I use for a graham cracker crust, but I was really just kind of eyeballing it. So I'll do my best to put down in the description the measurements that I used. But I put in all of those pork rinds that I had, and I actually had some left over, but I just filled my food processor up to the top, and then I blended those up until they were fine. I took a stick of butter and I buttered my pie dish, and then the rest of that butter I put in a cup and stuck it in the microwave to melt it. I also put about 2/3 of a cup of Swerve sweetener into the pork rinds, and then I dumped the rest of that melted butter into there so that it would make it more of a crumbly crust. There was probably 4 tablespoons of butter, I would guess, in that, but you can always add more if you need to if it's not crumbly enough. The last time I made this, I actually did not bake the crust. I just made it like this, and then I pressed it all into the pan and put it in the fridge to help it to get solid before I put the filling on it. And my husband and I actually both like this a lot more when I baked the crust. So this crust, I baked it at 350 degrees, I think, for about 10 or 15 minutes. And when it came out of the oven, I was worried I had burned it, but after I put the filling on top and had it in the fridge, it did not taste burnt at all. It didn't even taste like pork rinds to me. Last time I could taste the pork rinds. This time I could not taste them at all, just from the baking process. So next time I make this, I'll definitely be baking this crust because it gets a lot more crunchy and crispy, and it helps to get rid of that pork rind taste so that you're not having that with your cheesecake. So I ended up having a little bit of leftover pork rinds. I just put those in a Ziploc baggie, and I think I stuck them in my fridge. I probably should check and make sure they're in there. I just thought they would be a yummy thing to just eat for a snack when I wanted something sweet because they've got that butter and the sweetener in there. Last time I made this also, I used more sweetener. I think I put a whole cup instead of just 2/3 of a cup, and it was too sweet for me. If you've ever had erythritol, it has a cooling effect in some people's mouths, and it really has a cooling effect in my mouth. And last time I just put too much in with the crust, and I could taste it, and it almost ruined the cheesecake for me. So this time I made sure not to over sweeten it, and I think it came out perfect. Now you'll notice on this crust, there's a dark ring around the edge, this ring here. I actually ended up just breaking that off, so it made a nice level top around the sides. And it turned out great. Almost all of it was gone. We actually took this to a dessert fellowship. Almost the whole thing was gone. I think we had 3 pieces left when we brought it back home, and everyone loved it and said it was delicious. I even put a warning sign on there that it was made with pork rinds and it was low carb and sugar free, just because I didn't want people to be surprised thinking it was a regular cheesecake. And I was shocked at how many people took it anyway. Right now I'm mixing up some gelatin. I put 2 bricks of cream cheese into my blender, and then I put some cold water in my cup, and I put in about 4 tablespoons of gelatin, and then I'm just going to stir that up together with a fork until there are no clumps left in my cup. And then to the cream cheese in the blender, I added in a capful of vanilla, which is probably 1.5 or 2 teaspoons. And then I poured some cream in there until I thought it was the right amount. I think I started with 2 cups of cream, and then I actually put the sweetener in next, and I think I did about 1.5 cups of sweetener, maybe a cup. Let's see what my measuring cup looks like. Can't quite tell which one I'm using there. Yeah, I think 1.5 cups of Swerve sweetener in there. And I started blending this and realized it was too thick, so I went ahead and added about another 2 cups of cream, so I had 4 cups of cream total. And it's nice to do this in the blender because it not only gets rid of all those chunks of the cream cheese, but it also helps to whip the cream, so it almost turns into like a whipped cream instead of just being liquidy. So after I wipe the sides down from the first time I blended it, then I added in the other 2 cups of cream, and I put in the gelatin on top of that. Now the gelatin does start to get jellied because when it hits the cold of the cream, it starts to solidify. But it broke up really well in the blender. There were just a couple pieces, so next time I'll make sure I blend that up a little bit longer before I put it into the pie. But using the blender just does all of that work for you. You don't have to worry about trying to get it in the mixer or with your hand. The blender does a really good job with that. So after I had that, I went ahead and did a taste test, and I wanted to see the texture of this. I took those chunks off the edge and tasted with the filling, and it was delicious, and it got even better after it sat in the fridge all afternoon. I went to the store before we took this to our dessert fellowship, and I actually bought 1 can of blueberry pie filling and 1 can of the sugar-free cherry pie filling. I would have preferred blueberries, but they didn't have sugar-free, so I used some of the cherries with mine. My husband just had his plain, and I would have to say this is probably the best carnivore cheesecake, sugar-free cheesecake, low-carb cheesecake that I have made in my life. And I've made quite a few of them, and this one just turned out so good. Baking that pork rind crust really made the difference for this, and I was very, very happy with the way that it turned out. One little trick that I used to make sure this had a nice smooth top and that I didn't pull up any of the crust was to dip my spatula in some water in between wiping it. I think I used some warm water here just so that it wiped across easier, but that's just a little trick. It keeps all of the filling from sticking on your spatula, and then you're able to spread it out without pulling up your crust. Make sure you check the description box down below if you are interested in trying this recipe. Let me know if you give it a try. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow with another one. Bye-bye.